people on this good Sunday. Welcome to another edition of HBCU Live. I'm Kendrick Marshall. That's Chris Stevens. And below me is Jared Hoffman. And FAMU has a football coach, folks. They finally got a football coach. Late afternoon yesterday, Florida A&M named interim head coach James Colzie its permanent head coach, the 19th head coach in history of Florida A&M. He replaces Willie Simmons, who went to Duke, as we know. And it took 27 long days for the school to finally make a decision. They needed to have a search committee backed by a search firm. And there was all kinds of tumultuous drama and infighting. And the athletic director was at the center of this, Tiffany Dawn Sykes. A lot of commentary about her and the job she did during this process. But eventually, Florida A&M ended up with the guy that the players wanted and a lot of alumni wanted. I'm going to start with Chris on this one. What do you think led to them hiring James Colzie, despite the fact that they really could have done it the day after Willie Simmons left?
I think what it boils down to is that Tiffany Dawn Sykes and Dr. Larry Robinson were pretty much bullied, into this choice. That's my personal opinion. Again, I know my fellow panelists may feel differently. I know we're probably going to have some Florida A&M folks on here that are going to, call for my head, but that's my opinion on the matter. Like, Sean Gibbs was, the guy originally. If you folks aren't familiar with how this process has gone through, and that choice was signed off by Dr. Robinson. So when the president usually accepts an athletic director's recommendation, case closed, right? We move on. We announce the hire. We work out a contract. We announce the hire. We have the press conference. Then the coach is free to go recruit and talk to guys and, get started for the next season. That did not happen, of course, with the folks was on the highest of the Seven Hills. And, the search committee, the board of trustees meeting where AD Sykes had the receipts, to quote the late, great Whitney Houston. When people say, when Whitney said she wanted to see the receipts, she has to be proud in the great beyond, because AD Sykes brought the receipts out that, the board of trustee chair and president had signed off on Sean Gibbs originally. But overall, as I said on my hot take segment on the HBCU Sports YouTube channel, everyone that has screamed, kicked, hollered, thrown a temper tantrum, questioned the authority of the AD, stalked her crying out loud, because let's not forget there's a Florida A&M blogger who apparently knows what time she gets to work, which is weird as all get out. Y'all better hope this works, because if y'all finish anything less than not just out of first place in the SWAC East, but if y'all finish under 500, the jokes are going to be coming nonstop, and you will have earned every single laugh coming your way, because none of this has made any sense. If y'all wanted Colzie, you should have just said, we need James Colzie III in that seat. And instead of doing that, you went and found an old film of Coach Gibbs when he was at A&T, breaking up a fight between A&T and Florida A&M players. You've accused AD Sykes of, being incompetent at her job, which of course does not hold water at this point. So, Florida A&M got their guy, but as the old saying goes, at what cost? Kendrick, you're on mute.
Well, I heard him toss it to me, so I saw him toss it to me. So basically, yes, this is the guy that they wanted the whole time. After all of this, whatever you want to call it, they end up getting the guy that they wanted. And as Chris put it, they better hope it works, because you spent a lot of resources and dedicated a lot of time into making this decision. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Mr. Colzie to make sure that the engine keeps running. They wanted it in-house for a reason. They wanted it in-house because they believe that they have the team that can compete for years to come. And you still have some of your guys. You're going to be without your defensive player of the year. You're going to be without your offensive player of the year, and as well as some other talent who will be either entering the NFL draft or have entered the transfer portal or decommitted from you this offseason as a result of everything that is going on. So you'll have a different team, but you'll have a team that is good enough to compete. And with Alabama State improving the way that they have, going out and getting Andrew Body, going out and getting Daquan Quincy, and you got Jackson State, who is always great at recruiting, having another big off season the way that they did. You got some competition this year. And to be clear, they're still good enough to get it done. But the pressure to get it done is amplified as a result of everything that took place, giving AD Sykes the vote of no confidence, having the board meetings where you're calling out the fact that she doesn't communicate with you, the fact that you feel like you're unheard. Well, you were heard in this situation. You got the person that you wanted. Now it's on him to get the job done because you put the pressure on AD Sykes to put him in that position. And I hope that all of those people who gave her that vote of no confidence, if this does not work out, and that's a big if, that you are in front of the camera and saying, hey, he didn't get it done. You better have all the faith in the world that he will get it done if he doesn't get it done this year. But you still have a good enough team, so we're not going to put that energy in the air that it's not going to work out. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Colzie to get it done.
Not only on Colzie to get it done, but there's a lot of pressure on the football team's performance going to reflect on Tiffany Dawn Sykes too. I mean, like, part of the reason why the search committee was formed and a search firm was instituted was because a lot of the alumni felt like she did not reach out to them properly, that they were not consulted first before she went and interviewed Sean Gibbs and considered him to be the head coach. So it's going to be a lot of pressure on her as well. Like, the team's success is going to be tied to her perception of success. So for me, it seems like Jared said, like Chris said, like you said, this could have been handled a little bit better. And if you're going to spend these resources on a search firm to end up with the same guy as you wanted all along, and surprise went all along, then it shouldn't have went down the way it did. Like, Colzie should have been the guy from day one. But we do have one guy who was a part of the search committee and one vocal voice of that search committee, an actual player. We're going to bring to the stage now Kelvin Dean Jr., who had been advocating for James Colzie to be the coach along with several other players. Kelvin, thanks a lot for joining the show. We really appreciate it. I know you're one of the happiest guys on the FAMU campus right now. that the school named that the coach you wanted to be in that position, the coach all along. So how do you feel about the decision, and how does it feel to finally have this process being over?
I feel real good about it. Also, my teammates, it's something they wanted. So I'm just glad that we're moving in the right direction as far as hiring in-house, keeping our staff, making sure everybody returns comfortably, and keeping the same motion going towards repeating.
Yeah, so it took 27 days before Willie Simmons was replaced by James Colzie. None of us are in the locker room. None of us are on the practice field and in meeting rooms with James Colzie. Why did you guys think he was the best fit for the job?
I mean, he was just, the perfect leader. Like, he was an interim head coach. When Simmons didn't come in and meet with us in the morning, he came in and gave the message for practice that day. So it just made everybody feel as if he could easily come in and take over the same role. Also, he knows how to win. He's been here with the team I think it's 21-3 since he's been here. So that's a pretty good record. I mean, you got a Celebration Bowl championship under his belt and a SWAC championship. So that's something to build on.
I'll ask one more question before I talk to the guys. You were a part of the search committee that eventually ended up deciding that they wanted Colzie to be the head coach, along with the AD and the school president and the board, obviously. What was that process like to go through, getting that kind of inside look at how the sausage is made, if you will?
It was it was a pretty interesting process. Actually, I felt good knowing that my word mattered and that they accepted that the players' word meant a lot. It held a lot of weight. Just my opinion and the players' opinions, it held a lot of weight. It was interesting to actually see, get to see all the people that wanted to come be our coach, and just made me realize, like, FAMU is a hot topic. Like, a lot of people want to come and be our leader and come help us win too.
Was there like ever any concern when you found out, 45 people applied for this job, that Colzie might not be the guy at the end of the day?
Uh, I mean, I just looked into the history of schools that hire within and versus schools that didn't. It could have either been a rebuild or a reload, and the reload would always be better than a rebuild. We don't want to restart. We want to just keep everything going in the same motion. So I wasn't really worried, especially seeing most of the people on the committee agreed with me when I brought up Colzie.
Okay. Christian Jared.
Kelvin, thanks for joining us. As Kendrick said before, during the course of the season, did you guys have any inkling, any idea that Coach Simmons was looking elsewhere? Or was it just that mission of just getting to the Celebration Bowl, and then after the fact, did you guys learn that he was wanting to leave for Duke?
Was he talking to me? I can't hear.
Yeah, he asked you, did you guys have any inclination that Willie Simmons might be leaving the season?
I mean, we didn't really have any, we didn't know. He kind of like, informed us a little bit over a team meeting that, about his job offer or whatever. But like, when you win, it's kind of expected, especially when you do it for so long. He was a hot topic the past couple years when it came to him being in a situation to leave. So you knew that the time was eventually coming, especially when he wanted to level up.
So, Kelvin, what was your honest opinion about how the entire process played out? With Sean Gibbs was presented as the candidate to replace Willie Simmons, and you saw people sharing their displeasure. They're saying that they wanted to hire from within. You had the board meetings made public about AD Sykes being voted, having a vote of no confidence, and having a vote of no confidence for Gibbs as the next head coach. What did you think about how the entire process played out?
Can you repeat his also?
Yeah, he just wanted to know, like, how do you feel about the entire process played out after Willie Simmons left, with kind of like all the drama that went on before you guys named the head coach?
I mean, personally, I don't feel like there was any drama. I feel like, they handled it carefully, didn't want to make the wrong decision. A lot of people had a lot to say about like the decision making, but I feel like based on her part, she took her time, didn't want to like take the program in the wrong direction. And at the end of the day, like, she listened to what we wanted. At the end of the day, that's all it boils down to. She listened to what we wanted. Might have lost a little bit in the process, but I don't think, it really hurt us in the grand scheme of things.
I'm wondering, like, how much did the football team like trust her to make the right decision? And because the outcome ended up being what you wanted, does that mean you trust her more, or regardless of what happened at the end of the day, you still going to believe in your AD?
I mean, we got to believe in her. If she's going to believe in us, we got to put our trust back in her to make this thing all work. At the end of the day, we just got to trust each other, trust the people that's around me playing every day, and then we are in the right position now. This is what we wanted. So now the weight is on our shoulders to make her decision right. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really matter what happens, as long as if we don't come back and win, a lot of people gonna have something to say regardless. So we just got to make sure we come out and perform, so we can make sure that her hire is correct.
And speaking of performing, you're going to be moving forward without two of your top guys, Jeremy Musa and Isaiah Major. What is the level of confidence in this team that you guys will be back in the Celebration Bowl? If you might have to repeat it, he probably didn't hear.
Yeah, so Kelvin, Jared wanted to know, like, you're gonna be out some guys that played with you in the Celebration Bowl last year, helped you win the SWAT championship, helped you win the whole thing last year. Like, what's that going to be like next year trying to repeat?
a lot of the guys that are out, they were here for some time, and they were all excellent leaders. So I feel like with the leadership that they passed down to the guys under them, it was enough depth in our roster that we can come back and the players behind them could have also played and produced just as much. You know what I'm saying? So not really worried. I think we got plenty of depth. I think it'll be, we just got to make it all come together. We got to be a team again and bring it back together with the new pieces we're bringing in.
Yeah, the guys were talking like with the hire going down the way it did, and kind of like everything that happened leading up to it. There's going to be a lot of pressure on you guys to try to win next year and repeat because of that. Are you guys willing to embrace that challenge, or how you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, we embraced the challenge last year. Coming into the season, we were predicted to win everything. And, we just kept that in mind. When it's a target on your back, you just got to come to work harder every day, knowing that every game you play somebody, you're going to get their best game.
All right, Chris or Jared, any follow-up questions?
Chris?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, Kelvin, like I'm curious. For Willie Simmons, like how did you feel about him leaving? I know you mentioned like when you win, other schools gonna be looking at you to try to like fill their jobs on their coaching staffs. Like, did you feel like he could have stayed one more year? Did you feel like the school could have done more to keep him around? Like how you feel about him like leaving overall?
Well, personally, it happened to me my freshman year at my old school. I came in my freshman year with a coach that was already in the process of winning. He had won a championship before, and then it was his third season at my school. He won a championship when I got there. So it's kind of something I've been through before. You know what I'm saying? Like, when your coach is winning, everybody going to want to come pick from your staff. Like, I mean, hey, Simmons has proven himself. He did what he needed to do. He won the biggest game that he could win here. Like, I feel like he's proven himself, and he earned the right to move on. I feel like maybe he could have been a head coach somewhere. I think he definitely earned the right to go be a head coach somewhere. But I definitely respect his moving up into the FBS world, and eventually, I'm sure he'll be a head coach somewhere.
Like when he decided to leave, like what did he say to y'all in any meetings he had with y'all when he made that decision?
And he just told us, I got a job offer. I get back with you guys in the next couple of days. I'm gonna take some time and think on it. And we didn't really speak too much more on it. Just told us about meetings and stuff that we would have coming up.
Okay. So you talked about like there's really no pressure to try to repeat what you did last year because you guys were favorites coming into this season anyway. So how much harder are you guys going to work, for James Colzie, because this is the coach that y'all wanted?
1,000 times harder. When it's somebody that you believe in, they believe in you, you're gonna go hard for them. It's like, that's like a parent coaching you. You gonna work hard to make your parents look good, or what I'm saying, somebody you close to. So everybody is right. We've been on that work mindset even before he got chosen as a coach, but now that he's chosen, it's another fuel to the fire at it.
Okay. Well, Kelvin, thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your comments and your perspective on all this. And we hope nothing but the best for Florida A&M. I hope the football team is able to have a good season coming up in 2024.
Appreciate you guys, man. Thank you for having me.
Yes, no problem. There you have it, Kelvin Dean Jr., Florida A&M football player, part of the search committee. I'm glad that was able to get insight on that one. So, fellas. Based on what Kelvin said about his experience, like his thought process, what do you guys think about the process now that you actually heard from somebody from the inside? Starting with Chris.
I've been one of the most critical people during this entire process, and I have to admit, the young man came on here, gave us straight ahead answers, no BS, which is what we like to hear. And I still, have some misgivings about the process, but it feels a little better knowing that, they had a voice in the room who wanted to, who actually is going to have to play for this guy, obviously. And, if his underlying sentiment is echoed by the other 85, 90 guys on that roster, then that's fine. More power to Florida A&M. But I still think, we see people in the comments. I've seen somebody, accuse, AD Sykes of having previous dealings with Coach Gibbs. And if you can't prove that, then you really should be careful before you open yourself up to a defamation lawsuit. And I see somebody saying he's not about the gossip or the drama, and we thought we would get some viral interview. And
I saw that too.
This is how I know that media literacy is dead on arrival. None of y'all can read. None of y'all care to think. None of y'all critically put yourselves in a place to be, put some common sense into your heads. Because we asked Kelvin to come on. I know Kendrick did because Kendrick is our senior editor and the guy who, the head coach of this operation, honestly. Ken Rashad is the general manager and the owner. Make no mistake about it, but Kendrick is our head coach. And we knew that Kendrick was going to, ask this young man to come on, and we weren't going to ambush him with nonsense because we are trained journalists. We don't BS. We don't look for the clicks. We're not like, someone who fashions himself as the Charlemagne the God of HBCU sports, So this is how I know media literacy is dead, because if you thought we were going to try to, get something viral off of this, you're dead wrong. But yes, overall, I feel like the process that Florida A&M, as convoluted as it is, it makes more sense now that we've heard from Kelvin.
Right, Jared, your thoughts?
Well, he didn't say anything that I didn't expect, honestly. I think he was a guy that wanted Colzie in that room, and he got him. I knew he was going to have, because why wouldn't you have confidence in your team when you just won it? Why would you not have confidence in a team that you went through walkthroughs with, training camp with, having practice every week with, going and fighting with them in the trenches with? Why wouldn't you have confidence in that team? You know what I mean? Think about this. Kelvin Dean was named the offensive MVP of this year's Celebration Bowl on a field that also had Jeremy Musa, that had Marcus Riley, that had Jamarie Shareed, that had Terrell Jennings. All these guys were on the scouting report, and he was the guy that won MVP. Not to say that he wasn't a factor throughout the season, because he absolutely was. But when you're looking at the scouting report, you're thinking about those guys. But you also have Jaquez Young also in the backfield that you have to worry about. So when he talks about having that depth, that's what he means. Even though Jeremy Moose is going to be gone, even though Isaiah Major is going to be gone, even though Kendall Bowler is gone, even though Jamarie Shareed is gone, even though all of these guys are gone, don't think that this team doesn't have the confidence that they can repeat. And I see somebody say vote Kelvin Dean Jr. as the preseason player of the year, and they might be on to something, because with Terrell Jennings gone, he's going to get some carries. And if his performance in the Celebration Bowl is any indication, and even throughout the season, he's not no one-trick pony. He has been a contributor throughout the entire season. And with Terrell Jennings gone, with Marcus Riley gone, with Jamarie Shareed gone, they're going to have to rely heavily on that running game with Jaquez Young and Kelvin Dean. So I would not be surprised if Kelvin Dean made a push for that SWAC Offensive Player of the Year award, and possibly is a huge contributor for the Rattlers getting back to not only the SWAC championship game, but potentially the Celebration Bowl.
Yeah, like for me, what I took out of Kelvin's comments was that they, trust Tiffany Dawn Sykes. I know a lot of the alumni probably don't or be skeptical of her moving forward. But if you have buy-in from the athletes, who are the most important people in your program, that says a lot. I mean, she's a first-year athletic director, her first time big hire, first really big decision. And so I don't know if she was bullied into the decision or not. Like, we don't know the process and that intimately to speak so confidently about that. But they end up with the coach that the players are happy with, and that what kind of matters here. And I don't think they will go through 45 different candidates or however many there were and only choose Colzie because she was bullied or because that's what the players wanted. I think they work into the best interest of Florida A&M in that regard. So plus Colzie, like Kelvin said, they're gonna play harder for him because this is the guy that they wanted. The number one thing for any new coach is to get buy-in for the players, and he already has that, at least with the guys who remain on the team. So that sets him up for success, at least from that standpoint. They'll be willing to go the extra mile for him. They'll be willing to play hard for him because they know, hey, this is the guy that we told the school that we wanted to be our head coach. So they ain't gonna have to go all out for him. So fellas, now that Colzie's in there, it's prediction time. How do we think Florida A&M is gonna do in the fall? Starting with Chris.
Whew. Well, before we came on this very air, this fine Sunday afternoon, we said anything less than 7 wins would be a disappointment. And Jared trumped me one better, said they got to win the SWAC East. And I'm in line with that thinking. I mean, I feel like this is still a very good football team. Yes, Alabama State finally has an offensive general worthy of that defense. Yes, Jackson State is probably going to go out and get some kids because TC Taylor is the guy that, everyone wants. I mean, it's interesting. Jackson State handled this a lot better than Florida A&M did. But, but I feel like, Florida A&M still is an 8-9 win team, possibly, a SWAC championship. Really all depends on what happens in the West with the new head coaches. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and say it. I feel like, with all of this, in the world, it's FAMU against everybody right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, they'll win the SWAC East. They'll probably win the SWAC. And depending on who comes out of MEAC, probably win the Celebration Bowl again.
All right, Jared.
Best case scenario, they're 9-3 and they win the SWAC East. Worst case scenario, they're 6-5. I think there's a scenario where they win the SWAC East and they get to the SWAC championship game. Now, whether they win the SWAC is in question because you still got Alabama State, who, as Chris said, now has a quarterback, it now has an offense that can pair up with that defense, even though they lost some pieces this offseason. But that team is going to be legit. Jackson State had a year to build with TC Taylor as the head coach. So you're going to have some competition within those two teams. Looking at their schedule, there's a path there, but it's going to be a little bit tougher than they have in years past. And with Alabama State, I'll be later this week, I'll be posting my predictions for Alabama State season. Alabama State has 6 home games this year, and they have 9 games in the state of Alabama. So no matter what, they're going to have the majority of those stands filled up. So it's going to be a gauntlet to try to go in there and beat them with that defense that now has an offense to pair with it. And then you got Jackson State, like I said, who had a year with TC Taylor to build and get that chemistry and to, fine tune all the mistakes that they made throughout the season. And they still finished 7-4 with all the learning that they had to go through, with all the mistakes that they made, with everything that they had to fight through. They still ended up finishing 7-4. So now that they have the recruits that they want, minus some guys, now that they have all the guys that they feel like they need, and they can now put everybody in the right position, and they could potentially be a competitor in that SWAC East along with FAMU and Alabama State. So realistically, my best case scenario is that they're 9-3 and they win the SWAC East. But worst case scenarios, they're possibly 6-5.
Yeah, you hope that they'll be in contention during the season, despite the transition for a new coach. But looking at their schedule right now, October pretty much is going to decide whether or not they repeat as SWAC East champions, because they got a test in October. October 5th, they play at Alabama State. And then October 19th, they play at Jackson State. And then October 26th, they host Southern. So they're going to have a tough stretch from October 5th through October 26th. I don't know what their record is going to be ultimately, but I think like that 3-week span is probably going to decide their season. I mean, Alabama State has been improving every year under Eddie Robinson Jr. Jackson State will be coming off a 7-4 season, and they retooled with some high-end recruits already this offseason, with National Signing Day coming up in a few weeks to add some more pieces. We don't know how Southern's going to be under first-year head coach Terrence Graves. But the SWAC is going to be more competitive, I think, because of all the turnover with the head coaching positions all across the conference, more so than in previous years. I know the SWAC West is going to be up for grabs for sure. It's definitely going to be, in my opinion, a 3-team race between Jackson State, Alabama State, and Florida A&M. And whoever is able to survive that middle part of the season unscathed is probably going to win the SWAC East and go to the Celebration Bowl. But depending on who Florida A&M's quarterback is, depending on the pieces they surround that quarterback with, and how James Colzie is able to navigate all that, especially with the losses they had from the roster to the transfer portal over this last month. It'll be interesting to see like where FAMU ends up in the SWAC East coming up in 2024. But fellas, what will decide whether or not FAMU actually wins the SWAC East or has a really good season? Is it because of James Colzie? Is it because of recruiting, or what factors you guys think will determine how far Florida A&M goes this season? Starting with Jared.
I think the thing that determines whether they get back to the SWAC, the top of the SWAC, is if the guys that, as Kelvin Dean put it, that are behind the guys who got them there last year perform. You know, we saw, you know, all of the pieces that Jackson State had that were coming in behind Shador, coming in behind Travis Hunter, Sevion Wilkerson, and James Houston, so on. So not James Houston, excuse me, Aubrey Miller. Sorry. All the guys that came in behind them, they had to produce to get them to 7-4 this year. But now you got guys coming behind Jeremy Musa, coming behind Terrell Jennings and Isaiah Major. And as people are saying in the chat, Kendall Bowl is still there. So that was my faux pas. But that's still a significant loss to your team to not have Marcus Riley, not have Jamari Sharee. You still got all of these guys that you have to fill in behind those guys. So you got to coach up the guys that you have. And not to mention that they lost their top recruiter, who was a big part of that football team. So it's all about if the guys who are coming in can buy in and can produce. If those guys buy in and are able to produce and they're able to build that chemistry quickly, this team could very well be in the SWAC championship game and be in the Celebration Bowl. They are good enough to do that, and they have the culture set to be able to do that.
Yeah, somebody in the chat asked, like, why do we think the SWAC champion going to come out of the SWAC East? I mean, there's a little bit more stability in the SWAC East than it is the West in terms of coaching. You got the SWAC West, first-year coach at Grambling, first-year coach at Southern, second-year coach at Arkansas Pine Bluff. I think the longest tenure coach in the division is Bubba McDowell at Prairie View. Texas Southern will have a first-year head coach too, with Chris Dishman. So those schools are going to be like trying to navigate their way through the season. On the SWAC East side, you got T.C. Taylor, second-year coach, Ed Robinson Jr. to be third-year coach, and I know James Colzie will be a first-year coach, but he's coming back with the champs. So there's an advantage in that a little bit. The transition won't be as easy. It's difficult for him in that regard. Jared?
Also, just to point out to that point, the SWAC championship hasn't come out the SWAC West since 2017. So when Alcorn State was winning them SWAC championships, they were in the SWAC East. So the SWAC West ain't won the SWAC since 2017. So that's another reason. But I will say Alcorn State has the talent to do it. I will point that out. But they still got to prove it.
That's a good point, Jared. Yeah, Cedric Thomas also first-year head coach at Alcorn State. So that side of the SWAC conference is heavy on inexperience in head coaching. So, and that kind of matters when you're trying to talk about what teams are going to come out and win championships in the given season. But Chris, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, well, that's Jared. I'm Chris. Here we go.
That's called bad producing.
It's Sunday. I mean, we all ready for the AFC and NFC championship game, so you can be forgiven for that. But yeah, I think it's one hand washes the other situation. Like, yes, now you have James Colzie III in as your head coach. You still need to go out and get guys, or coach up the guys that you have. You have to hope that everybody's all on the same page, which it feels like finally everybody is now. You have to go out and play the games, as Herman Edwards would say. You play to win the game, and right now, all the stuff that we're talking on January 28th probably won't have any meaning by the time we get to the first, the last weekend in August and the first weekend in September, because that's when the kids step on the field. That's when the games are played. That's when we, find out who scores more points than the other until, we get to the Celebration Bowl, December I believe it's the 14th this time in good old A-Town. So, I mean, yeah, it gives us something to talk about. But right now, it's just really a matter of everybody working together, everybody on the same page, everything that Florida A&M, stands for better, for worse, getting, everybody on the same page in that regard. So I just feel like I mean, it's early, but you never know. I mean, this is a team that, they didn't run roughshod over anybody, but they won the games that they needed to win all the way through. So who's to say they can't do it again?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, never underestimate a heart of a champion, as Rudy Tom Donovich once said, former coach of the Houston Rockets. But this is going to be a different team. Every year, teams are going to be different because of roster turnover, what have you. But like Florida A&M is going to be different because they lost the best coach in the conference. They lost some guys from their roster to the transfer portal. They lost some guys from the roster because of attrition. And they're going to have to find replacements for those people on their roster or on the other signing day or from the transfer portal. So it's going to take some time for them, at least in the beginning, to try to gel, to try to get on the same page, to try to learn whatever system James Colzie installs and his assistants install on his staff. We don't know if the remaining staff is going to stay there because the new coach might want to bring in his own people to run different aspects of the football program. And as Jared mentioned before, they lost their ace recruiter, so that hurts them too. So we may be predicting Florida A&M might have a good season, but there are other reasons why they might not either because of the things that we kind of mentioned in our conversation. But you never know. Like me personally, like I think it's going to be a 3-team race between Jackson State, Florida A&M, and Alabama State. And of those three, you figure Florida A&M is going to be the favorite because they're the champs, but they will come into the season more vulnerable than they did last season. I know, Chris, you mentioned like how they, despite the fact they won the SWAC East and they won the SWAC, it wasn't always pretty last year either. Like Willie Simmons had to defend Jeremy Musa from alumni who thought he should replace his quarterback. Willie Simmons himself was frustrated with the offense, how it kind of underperformed at times. They had their really great defense to kind of carry them throughout the entire season. So teams are going to be gunning for them this season. Teams are not going to be afraid of Florida A&M. They're going to have to accept all challenges coming into the season. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare in 2024. I know the season's, 7 months away now. We're talking about, like, who could possibly end up in the SWAC championship game. But, I mean, like, football conversation never stops around here or anywhere for that matter. But it'll be interesting to see, like, how Florida A&M gets past this period and kind of, like, moves on and try to work toward having a good season next year. But fellas, is there anything else you guys want to say about this entire Florida A&M search, starting from when Willie Simmons decided to leave the school for Duke up until they named James Colzie the head coach?
I think that we've learned more about bureaucracy in HBCU sports and HBCU administration than any of us ever thought we'd ever want to learn about this whole, backdoor dealings about who to talk to, who needs to check in with who. Like, I never thought an AD would need a flight pass, to touch down with, certain groups to make sure this is the person that, that they want for the job. But apparently certain, athletic departments, they listen to their booster groups, for better or for worse. And we've learned that a lot of people, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen with respect to Florida A&M and Texas Southern. I mean, because right now, those are the two most unserious coaching searches I've seen in a long time. And I've been in this business since 2002. So I've seen some interesting coaching searches in my day as a journalist. And these are two of the most unserious ones I've ever seen in my life. But at this point in time, it's over for both of them. The coaches are in place. They get to hit the ground running. I mean, they pretty much have to hit the ground running because National Signing Day is just a couple of weeks away. So right now, it gives us something to talk about, but hopefully the foolishness is over. We can get back to the business of actual athletics.
And I think the thing that they learned the most is, well, AD Sykes learned the most is they know she knows how the alumni think about her now. And now she understands that she has to be on high alert in every situation. She now understands that the alumni, the players, the FAMU community as a whole, they will not accept anything less than excellence. And what for better or worse, whether it's justified or not, this fan base saw something in AD Sykes that she was not doing her job to the best of her abilities. So now she has to be on high alert in everything. She has to be on point. Her communication has to be twice as thorough as it already may be or may not be. It has to be twice as thorough. She has to double back and make sure that if she sends an email, make sure they got it. If she sends a text message or however she chooses to communicate, make sure they get it. Because this alumni group or the investors or whoever it is, they see something in her that she is not working with them the way that she should. So she learned that whatever she has been doing, it's not enough. And I hope this is not the case, but apparently she's on thin ice, because the reaction that they had to her, this is not the first time that they have had a problem with her. And you could just see with the reaction to her. So I think that one thing that she has learned is that she has to be twice as thorough as she already is in everything that she has done, because the alumni fan base is not favorable of her at this time.
Real quick, shout out to our guy Brandon King in the chat. Thank you, fellas, for not using the S word once in this show. Yes, we are going to do the service of getting rid of the S word. And no, it's not a what's the word I'm looking for?
A word for excrement.
Yeah, it's not a slur. It's not a 4-letter word. It's not one of George Carlin's 7 words you can't say on television. That's for folks of a certain generation. I mean, folks who are old enough to remember George Carlin. But yeah, we are abolishing the S word on the HBCU Sports Live show. I mean, Ken Rashad might not feel that way, but I've officially made it my mission in 2024 to abolish the S word on this channel.
Yeah, we won't say that S word. This starts with the letters that got steak in it.
Only steak I like is medium rare.
Oh, you one of those guys, huh?
Oh yeah. You people that eat steaks that look like brake pads, y'all need Jesus.
I'm not gonna give my opinion on steak because I don't want to get canceled. So
I don't think people gonna cancel you over steak. It's not hard to do.
Yeah, I might be the one to get canceled for my medium rare take, but yeah, don't give me no black behind steak, man. Don't do that. No.
So, fellas, what do we think about that coaching list being leaked yesterday? We don't know if it's real or not, but like apparently somebody who knows somebody went on social media and leaked that thing. Like what does it say about just how crazy this whole process has been?
Real quick, shouts out to Tank Face, because why are you eating a baseball glove? Thank you. Because nobody should be eating a steak that damn raw. Okay, I mean that damn tough. But anyway, if that is the real list, then I feel like that gives credence to what I was saying earlier about AD Sykes being bullied into the decision, because it was like the committee feels like it was formed to undermine her authority in some way. That's my opinion on the matter. But if especially since the committee, when they had that meeting, said if this list of names is leaked, then we have to start all over again, because Florida apparently has these laws where you have to officially name folks. I mean, Ken Rashad talked about it on the previous episode, that where Florida has a state law that you have to name people who are applying for different positions. So now you can't even, do this properly, because people are leaking a list of names that may or may not be true or not. But did it undermine the process? I don't know yet, because it feels like Colzie was just going to be the guy from jump. But overall, it just really feels like this whole process was tainted because some people just really wanted to, make AD Sykes look bad. And that's my take on the matter. And Brandon, yes, just give me the cow right out the pasture. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, Chris wants to see blood come out that thing, man. That's what he wants from his steak. But Jerry, your thoughts on the list that we kind of run around the internet yesterday?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Nah,
You're on the top, you have to know something.
No, I'm not. Nah. It made it seem like the process was going to be longer than what it was. I think that's just what it was. You know what I mean? I think, and there were some names on that list. It would have been dangerous if they actually were in contention for that list. There was XFL coaches on there, and with the UFL about to get started in a couple of months, that would have been dangerous for them to try to find a head coach on the spur of the moment. You had Reginald Ruffin on there, who's the coach of Tuskegee, and they just lost Antonio Meeks, so they can't afford to lose an influx of talent down there in Tuskegee. So there was some names that were on it that made it seem like it was legitimate. Like there was a coach from Kansas City coaching staff who expressed his interest in the FAMU coaching job on Twitter. So I know that he was probably a legitimate candidate. But at the end of the day, Ed Reed wasn't on it, so I didn't believe it. I tried not to make an Ed Reed joke, but I couldn't resist. I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's one less black college football job he can try to get.
He's going too. I mean, now Benedict's going too. So now, I think every position's filled now.
They don't want Hue Jackson in Morehouse, so I don't know.
No, Karan Phillips does not want Hugh Jackson in Morehouse.
Yo,
check out that interview we did with him.
Real quick, you did a phenomenal job on that, man. Because Karan, I actually have, I didn't work closely with him, but he was an editor at our Delaware paper, when he was still, working with Gannett. And, I hadn't, worked with him closely, but, he's a very opinionated dude. He's strong in his convictions. And, y'all had a really good conversation, man. You deserve a lot of credit for putting that together.
Yep.
I appreciate it, man. Like, I'm the type of person Karan was, just, reading this stuff and, following him on social media. And he's pretty authentic, man. Like, that dude, that you said, was strong in his convictions, really, really strong against Hugh Jackson. And so I don't know what's going to make it that situation with Morehouse College. Me personally, I don't think Hugh Jackson's a trash coach, as Philip said. I think his work as as an assistant, as an offensive mind, kind of speaks for itself. Grambling did their offense did improve from year one and year two under him. It's just the defense was just terrible, and they were not disciplined enough to try to sustain any wins this past season. But whatever Morehouse decided to do, it's gonna make news, whether it's Hugh Jackson or somebody else. But what do y'all think about them possibly joining the MEAC? That's the rumor going around the internet too. Did that think about joining the MEAC?
You want to go first, Chris? Or?
Of course I will, because I'm a MEAC guy. Let's examine this closely. Morehouse has a really good basketball program. I'm not going to take that away from them. They have not had a winning season in football since pre-pandemic. They have not won an SIAC championship since George Herbert Walker Bush, not George Walker Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush was president of these United States. The MEAC right now, yes, they might be desperate for teams, but are they really that desperate? That's gonna open up a whole new can of worms as far as the travel situation goes, because wasn't that why Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman left in the first place? Because if you think Morehouse is going to travel, granted, the previous AD had a bunch of smoke for Dover. So, the Florida A&M AD previous to AD Sykes had a lot of smoke for Dover. So, that's why he's not the AD at Florida A&M anymore. But you think people from Atlanta are going to want to travel to Dover, Delaware for football and basketball? I don't think so. But if Morehouse has the money, and granted, it is Morehouse. They got some wealthy alum down there. If they can pull it off, God bless them. But I don't think it's going to make the MEAC any better. I still think the MEAC's best bet is Bowie State and Virginia State, but Bowie State and Virginia State are two very smart institutions who understand that that isn't feasible right now. And I don't know how it would be feasible for Morehouse, quite honestly.
Yeah, Jared.
I mean, they can try. They could do whatever they want. I just don't know how long it's going to last with them being in the MEAC. But yeah, I just people keeps putting all this information out there, like Virginia State or Bowie State or Fayetteville State should join the MEAC, talking about the fan bases and how they travel. But it's more than just that. It's more than just that when you talk about joining a Division I institution. At the end of the day, so you can try with all your might, but how attainable is it? How many teams have done it since North Carolina Central and North Carolina A&T? Those are two rarities. Savannah State tried it, and they lasted a decade, but now they're back in the SIAC because it wasn't sustainable. And as far as the Morehouse coaching search, real quick, I just want to talk about that real quick. With all due respect to Karen Phillips, all due respect, it was a well-written article, but there was some things where it was just kind of like, one, he was a little too derogatory toward Hugh Jackson. I get it. His head coaching resume ain't great. It's not. If you look at it under a microscope, it's not good. But you can't. You're on a team that hasn't won a championship in 33 years, and you haven't had a winning season, as Chris said, since pre-pandemic. You have been 1-9 in the last 2 seasons. You're not in a position to be picky. So if you have a guy that is interested in being your head coach, and it is realistic, and you match terms, then you should take it at this moment. Not saying that you have to agree to something long term. You can give him a prove it deal. And if he doesn't show improvement after the deal is up, you can choose to move on. And throughout the time that he is there, you could put together a target list of whoever you think would be a good fit for you at head coach. But I just think like you're not in a position to break down his coaching credentials and say, oh, he doesn't deserve to be the head coach of this team because he hasn't been good as a head coach. Now, I agree with this point that, maybe Hugh Jackson didn't represent the HBCU, or maybe he tried to represent the HBCU culture the right way. He just didn't go about it as well as people may think. It may have come off as corny rather than cool to some people. You know what I mean? But if that was your point, that, he doesn't understand HBCU culture, then we should educate him. We shouldn't just push him away and use his bad coaching record as the reason why he shouldn't be at an HBCU, specifically at Morehouse. But as far as them being in the MEAC, they can try, but I don't know how sustainable it is.
I will say this though, for a guy like Hugh Jackson, a black man, to be considered for a head coaching job, despite the fact his record would speak to he shouldn't be a head coach, is a privilege a black coach anywhere in America rarely ever experiences. So that's kind of one thing. Like, I think we should all realize Hugh Jackson is still very respected in coaching circles, not only in college but in NFL. He recently interviewed for one of those open OC jobs in the NFL. So people still think he's a very knowledgeable coach that brings value to any program, whether it's the NFL or in college football. Chris, you got something to say?
Yeah, I want to address this question in the chat. What's the right or wrong way to represent HBCU culture? There is a way that you can be educated, and Karan said it in his interview with Kendrick. Study what Eddie George has done. I mean, Eddie George, he comes from he went to school. He played in the Philadelphia Public League. Which has turned out some very tremendous athletes across different sports himself. Rasheed Wallace in the NBA. Different folks in MLB. He went to Ohio State. He played for the Tennessee Titans and the Cowboys, to quote Michael Wilbon, the Cowboys. But Eddie George went to Tennessee State and said, okay, I'm new here. Let me learn. Let me get the lay of the land. And granted, his complaints about the attendance were a little off-putting, but overall, he has dedicated himself to understanding the plight of HBCUs. So yes, I feel like that is the way that you can ingratiate yourself to HBCU culture, the community, by just being intellectually curious. That's basically what it boils down to. Intellectual curiosity is going to carry you a lot further than Hugh Bree, quite honestly. If you come in like a prime and say, okay, we're going to do it this way because I'm Deion Sanders, and as Jared has said many times before, only Deion can do that. You can't. Any other former NFLer or black coach of name that hasn't had HBCU experience can't just go into a program and say, we're going to do this way because I'm Hue Jackson. And granted, I was a Cleveland Browns fan, believe it or not, when Hugh Jackson was coach. Hugh Jackson, despite the fact that he did pull an offer out of his hat, it wasn't all his fault. That team stunk from the equipment manager to the front office. I mean, the owners, they definitely were under investigation by the SEC, for crying out loud, and no, not the Southeastern Conference, the Securities and Equities Commission. There's two different SECs for folks that aren't familiar. But yeah, the ownership group of the Browns was under investigation by the SEC, so they weren't really paying that much attention to football, so it wasn't all Hugh Jackson's fault that they sucked. But I do think that Karan's points about, learning HBCU culture are valid. And yeah, Hugh did look kind of silly trying to, dress like a, Steve Harvey Jr. the day of the Bayou Classic. And, standing in front of an SUV with a chain that looked like Flavor's clock. Yeah, boy. But, overall, I get all of Karan's points, but at this point, as Jared said, beggars cannot be choosers. Morehouse needs somebody to take over that program, especially after you just unceremoniously dumped an alumnus of the program. So Hugh Jackson, if he wants it, you better give it to him and give him every chance he can to succeed.
And real quick about that question about the right or wrong way to represent HBCU culture. I'm not saying that Hugh Jackson did it the wrong way. I'm just saying the way he did it could come off as corny. As you said, posting pictures in front of a SUV with a chain, posting in front of a jet or something, or a private jet or something like that. It looks corny. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying, like, I understand you're trying to bring swag to Grambling State, trying to bring, that confidence back to Grambling State, but it didn't help on the field. So, you know what I mean? So it did make Grambling look like the coolest school in the world. It made them look like they had the most swag and fashion, all of that, but it didn't help them on the field. So that not saying that that's a part of HBCU culture, but you got to understand that there's more to HBCU culture than just our style, and our style isn't forced. If you look on an HBCU campus, it's not forced. Those videos, while I understand what he was trying to do, it looked forced. You don't have to force that. You could just show the players coming off the jet with their suits on. Just film them walking down the steps with their suits, and that's enough. You don't have to do these heavily edited videos and all this stuff. You don't need all of that. You have enough with the guys that you have in your locker room. You know what I mean? So I feel like Hugh was trying to do things in a way where he could show, like, you could have this, you can look lavish and win doing it. You know what I mean? Like, or you can win and look lavish doing it. You know what I'm saying? When we already look lavish anyway. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like he was trying to inject his version of style, his version of swag, when it didn't feel right, because I don't feel, maybe the players did have some input into it. I'm not sure, but it didn't look like it to me. And it looked like he was trying to manufacture it rather than it just happening naturally.
The meme that's been going around for the last couple of years, with the old guy with the backwards baseball cap, carrying a skateboard, walking down the hall of school.
How do you do, fellow kids?
That's how Hugh Jackson looked, dressing like
That's how he looked.
That's how he looked. Yeah, but like I mean, like now, like the way college sports is with NIL, with the transfer portal, you got to be different a little bit. You may not want to dress like you a member of Run DMC, but you have to be a little bit different in order to like be attractive, to want to have recruits want to come to your school, consider your school. And while I think the private jet thing and the Rolls Royce thing and the big change was kind of corny, like kids like this stuff. They want to think their coach is cool and can relate to them on a certain level. Now, not everybody can be Coach Prime, as Karan Phillips said, because that's been Coach Prime since he was like 21 years old. That's how he rolls. And Hugh Jackson is a man in his I don't know what, late 50s, maybe early 60s, who trying to relate to the kids in that way. You wouldn't see like Nick Saban do something like that. Because like, why would Nick Saban do that? He can just flash the championship rings and like he can attract players that way. But like, yeah, like I think me personally, Hugh Jackson has a lot of good intentions. I don't think he's trying to like make a job at Grambling or a job at Morehouse College if he gets that a stepping stone to something bigger. I think that dude generally just loves coaching football, or love being around players, and will consider a job anywhere that allows him to do that. So I think what a lot of Karan said about his coaching is probably right, but like it seems as a guy was a little bit off because like I don't think Hugh Jackson is like that type of dude who just, you know, it's all about him. Like listening to him talk during the coaches' conferences, during media events, during Swipe Media Day, he comes off as kind of like a really like humble guy, not about him, about the program, about the kids. So like we may be in some circles anti-celebrity coach, but Hugh Jackson was one celebrity coach who really didn't behave that way, I think. But that is going to do it for our show today. We thank Kelvin Dean Jr. from Florida A&M for hopping on with us early in the show to talk about the head coach search process to ultimately end up with the school hiring James Colzie. We appreciate all of you guys' comments in the chat. Always very valuable when you contribute to the show that way. We try to make sure like we amplify those during the show. And please be sure to visit our website, HBCUsports.com, to donate there. We take money Cash App or any way you can give it to us. Feel free to follow us on our YouTube channel, on social media, on Facebook and X, and on Instagram as well. I'm Kendrick. That's Chris. Jared. Go Ravens.
Yes. And go Lions.
Ravens Lions.